action. I can't get no call to action, but I try, and I try, and I try.
Hello and welcome to Call to Action, the go-to podcast for anyone trying to make sense of the world of marketing, business and beyond. In an industry that is a minefield of utter bollocks, we aim to capture our heroes and allies from the front line to have a chinwag with. It's like Pokemon Go, with the single but vital exception that it's not a short-term bandwagon of shite. It's brought to you by Gasp and I'm Giles Edwards. This week, we shared photos of our troubling groin rash with the neighbourhood WhatsApp group. There was an ambulance outside Mrs. Taylor's within 15 minutes, all to win the approval of the UK comedy scene's most entertaining oversharer, Allyson June Smith. Canadian-born and Manchester-based, Allyson has been winning hearts, minds, laughs and snorts through her nervelessly candid stand-up that has taken her to some of the world's most famous funny festivals. She's also toured the UK with her own shows and in support of some true rib-tickling royalty, including Catherine Ryan, Jason Manford, John Bishop and Stephen Merchant. You'll also find Allyson, well, everywhere, as she somehow divides her time between a billion or so entertaining projects from TV and radio gigs to a couple of her own podcasts, the pant-wettingly funny Women Talking Bollocks and the pant-wettingly scary Horror Motel. Allyson says, I have a northern soul, everyone. I just have a Canadian voice. Welcome to the show, Allyson.
Oh, hi. That's so lovely. I forgot that I even said that quote, and I absolutely believe it. Northern soul Canadian here. Yeah.
Nice. Right. 7 quick fires, Allyson. Manchester or Calgary?
Ooh, don't hate me, Manchester, but Calgary.
Nice. Grilled cheese or tomato soup?
Oh, grilled cheese.
This is a tough one. Catherine Ryan or Jen Brister?
Oh, that is so hard. You're making me choose between friends. Oh, my goodness. Well, I'm going to say, Jen Brister. I'm in trouble.
Nice.
Yeah.
Data or data?
Data.
Ricky Lake or Sarah Palin?
Oh, come on. Ricky Lake, hands down forever.
Right, 2 more. What would you prefer, a wedding ring or a bathroom?
Ooh, I'm going to say a bathroom.
Finally, a bum bag or fanny pack?
Fanny pack now, because I know what fanny means here.
Nice. Well played. Well played. All warmed up.
Oh, that's great.
Nice one. Sailed through those. There was a bit of a stumbling block on Catherine or Jem, which was bang out of order to ask. But there we go.
Well, that's hard. Between people, I still love you, Catherine. I just, that's so awful. Okay, you got me there. Yeah.
Now listen, Allyson, did you always want to be a comic?
No. In fact, I love telling this story because my first dream, it's very much like Joan Rivers. I myself always wanted to be an actress. That's what I wanted to be, was an actress. And then when I graduated from university with a theater degree and an education degree, because I thought, I'll get my ed degree as a backup plan, right? Maybe I'll be a teacher. And then I graduated from university. I got offered a teaching job immediately. And I was just like, oh God, I don't want to give up the dream of being an actor, right? Even though everyone would be excited to get a job right out of the gate, but I just thought, this might be the beginning of the end of chasing a dream. And so I thought, well, what's something that I could do that doesn't require me to be cast in something? Because being an actor is very tricky because it's about, 9 times out of 10, people can argue this, but it's, do you look the part? Do you look the part? Are you? And so I thought there's so many limitations. And I was living in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. We don't have much of a celebrity system. We make some television, some things, but not a lot. So I thought, well, what's something that I could do? And then I thought, what about stand-up comedy? Never thought of it before in my life. And I just thought that strikes me as I just have to be funny. It would be a good way to market myself on stage. And I could do it in the evenings while I was teaching in the daytime. So I literally went, oh, maybe I'll try that. And then I thought, oh, how do you become a stand-up? So there was only one stand-up club in Calgary, Alberta, where I was from. It was Yuck Yuck's Comedy Club.
Yuck
so
Yuck,
I
yeah.
literally picked up the phone, boop, 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 called them and said, how does one become a comedian? And they were like, oh, well, we have an amateur night on a Tuesday night. And we also have the headliner of the week. He comes and he talks to the amateurs, or they talk to the amateurs for an hour. And then you just listen. And then we draw numbers. And then you can do a 5-minute spot if you draw the number. And I was
Nice.
like, oh, so I showed up. I listened to the, person speak, which was a friend of mine now, Damon Schritter. And then the second person I saw was a guy named Tom Stade, excellent Canadian comic now living in the UK.
Oh, I know Tom Stade well. Yeah. Brilliant. He's brilliant.
So he was the second comedian I ever heard talk about.
It's like he
being
smoked a
comic.
million cigarettes, right? Which he probably has. He's got that voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so literally that's how I started. And when I got there, they were like, they basically said, you don't have to draw a number. You're the only girl here. We don't get that many girls. Because, this was a few years ago. And they were like, do you just want to have a spot? So I kind of benefited from being the only gal that showed up. And there's a lot of talk about, it's harder for gals. And I agree with that. But in this instance, it really benefited me. So that night was the first time I did stand-up, and I was absolutely hooked. I didn't realize that it was the thing I was supposed to be doing until I did it. And then I went, oh, well, this is what I've been searching for. Yeah.
And what was that? Was that a feeling? Was that just a feeling that it was the right thing?
It was absolutely a feeling, because I remember I was about to go on stage and I said to the MC of the show, a lovely gentleman by the name of Shane Ogden, who I'm now good friends with. I said to him, I go, this is my first time on stage. And he's like, oh, okay. And I go, should I leave my glasses on or should I take them off? Because in theater, you're always taught, take your glasses off, let the audience see your full face. And he looked at me and he goes, well, why don't you ask them? And so that's how I started my first set. I went on stage and I was like, all right, everyone, glasses on or glasses off. And they were like, glasses on. And I just then went in, and it was like, oh my God, like there's no fourth wall. Like that's the first time I realized as a performer, it's me and them. Like it's me and them. I'm not playing a character. I'm not, like, they are looking at me and I am looking at them. So that was a pretty magical first moment to make me realize that. Yeah. And then after that, that is how it began. Yeah.
Did that give you confidence as well? This might be like a crowbarred parallel to draw, but when people are taught to, say, public speaking, so not necessarily stand-up, just presenting, like engaging with an audience is something that can really help alleviate stress and anxiety. I wonder if even just asking about your glasses immediately made you feel a bit more comfortable.
Completely. Absolutely. Because this was before I even really got into things and analyzing relationships with crowds and audiences. But I think that was key, is that in that moment, the audience felt absolute authenticity. They felt complete vulnerability from me and just honesty. And so that set the tone of the set, that first experience. And I didn't realize this until years later when I look back on it. But I think that is really key, is connection. And I think I was lucky because I had always kind of had that from even being a teacher or just, I guess, presenting, being an actor. I understood the concept of like, get people's attention, how to get them to pay attention, and then insert information. And I think I learned that a lot from teaching skills and just presentation. But that's always been my strength. I've always been very good, even though like deep down inside, sure, insecure person, picked on as a kid. What? Comedian picked on as a kid? What a surprise. But
such a cliche.
I know.
You're a living cliche.
It's ridiculous. But being in front of people, I found, has always been, I don't know. It's easy to talk to a crowd and be with them as opposed to individuals. I know that sounds crazy, but it's always been a lot easier for me. I love one-on-one times, but when I'm performing or big crowds, I got no problem with that. I kind of love it. Like even when friends get married or whatever, I'm like, hey, if you need an MC, if you need anyone to like tell people where to go or what to do, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but it's always just been I don't know. I like it. Even though I'm insecure, I got no problem being in front of people and being the bus driver for whatever event or thing is occurring,
Yeah, I get that. I think when people look back at their sort of favourite teachers, they're typically the ones that make learning fun, and they're witty and they've got character and personality. Were you that teacher then? Did you see your classroom, retrospectively looking back, it might be easy to say yes to this, but did you kind of perform as a teacher more than just, I don't know, broadcast from academia at them?
100 million %. In fact, there was this one teacher and she was so snooty, and it was just the way she said it to me one day. She was like, well, Miss Smith, not all of us can entertain the kids like you can. And I was like, whoa, all right, you're angry. Because they will listen to whatever I say. So absolutely. And I've always been a big believer in, to get people's attention, you have to break the norm a little bit. So even when I started teaching that first year, at the same time, and I'll point out, I started stand-up and teaching on the same day because I did not want to let myself down. So I went and I started teaching grade 11. So I was a high school drama teacher, theater arts. And I remember I sat down in front of the class. It was a grade 11 class. And I was like, okay, my name is Miss Smith.
How does that translate into British? What's grade 11? How old are they?
That would be like probably the year you do your GCSE, or what is
GCSEs. Okay, so sort of like 15, 16.
Yes, exactly. And I was like, okay, everyone, my name is Miss Smith. I'm going to be your drama teacher this year. I am only going to teach full-time for 1 year. I don't want to be here full-time. I am going to pursue being a stand-up comedian. So if you make this easy on me, I'm going to make it easy on you. And that is literally what I said to the kids. And
that's amazing.
Their jaws just dropped. And they were like, oh. And then I started teaching. And I was 23 at that time. So I was such a young teacher. I was full of energy. I didn't want to be there as much as them. So it made it very easy to yeah, it's true. And it's so lovely. One of the most amazing things still to this day is when I have former students show up at a show, and now and again they'll be like, Miss Smith, and they'll scream out in the audience. But afterwards they'll come up to me and they'll be like, you did it. You did what you said you were going to do. And I think that's so fun for me on a larger level. I can be a teacher, but there are some students out there who had me as a teacher, and when she said she's going to do this, and she did it. And I like to think that stands out to them, to make them realize that we don't always know the path in which we're going to go, but the key is to keep going. You have to keep pursuing something that is close to your heart and interest. If you don't, what kind of life are you living, right? That's what I've always thought,
Yeah, there's a real lesson there as well. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I love the way you spoke to them from the off as well. That was almost your glasses on or off moment with your class.
When I look at it that way, yeah, I guess that's the way I feel. That you got to talk to people is glasses off. Then they hear you, and then they'll buy in a bit more. But again, it comes down to genuine authenticity, vulnerability, and I think a lot of people. It's hard. It's hard to be that. But I wish people would understand, the more you identify with that and the more you are true to you, there's so much strength in being vulnerable or being honest. People buy into you more, I think, a little bit as a human or as a comedian or as a teacher, if you aren't afraid to show them a little bit more of your true self. Because at the end of the day, I think that's what we're all searching for, is someone who we identify with, someone that we go, yes, me too. Me too. I think that's what everyone's looking for. So, yeah.
Time, weather, and... We interrupt this podcast to announce that we will never interrupt this podcast with ads. Ads that awkwardly nudge you to contact the pod's host, Giles Edwards. Only last week, some pod listening companies did just that, calling for guidance on building a funnel. But we're not asking you to do that. Nope. Anyway, back to the show.
I wonder if teaching is some sort of gateway drug into comedy, because there's quite a few stand-ups, certainly British stand-ups, like Greg Davies springs to mind immediately, who spent time teaching. And in fact, his teaching is, a lot of his material is looking back at his teaching days, not least his role in the In-Betweeners. But there does seem to be quite a kind of direction from teaching into stand-up. I wonder why that is.
Well, I mean, standing in front of a room full of children is not that much different than standing in front of a room full of drunk adults. You know,
Fair.
like there is such a similarity in it all. And it is a matter of presenting information, whether that information be academia, whether it be comedic. It doesn't surprise me. I do think they do go hand in hand quite well.
So when you had, I think you said about an hour with Damon and latterly Tom, what do they do in that hour prior to you then potentially going on stage? Like, what do they talk about? Just kind of G you up?
No, they would talk about their experiences being a comedian. And like, it was such a varied thing. So like some guys would talk about the actual process of joke writing. Some people would talk about the process of traveling, what it's like on the road, making grilled cheese sandwiches with an iron in your hotel room. It was so great because it was like there was no rules, and they would just they'd give the headliner like $50 to just talk to us for an hour. And so they would just talk about whatever they wanted to talk about in regards to comedy, which I think gave us the young people or the amateurs, such a broad spectrum into the world of stand-up comedy and what it really was. Because I think there's a lot of people now that get into the world of comedy. It's such a different thing now. Like everyone's so interested in it. It's on Netflix. You know, now we've got social media where it's comedian clips all the time. We weren't exposed to it in that regard. So it was such a fascinating way to learn about the world of comedy from people who had been living in it. It was like a secret society that nobody knew about at the time. Now there's so much more knowledge about stand-ups and the life of stand-ups, and people are but back then it was like the secret little hidden world, and it was a lot of anonymity. That's something that I think about now with the world and the way it is and with social media. And when I started comedy, there was a lot of anonymity. Like you would go to a club, you would tell your jokes, you'd walk away, and there was no record of it. You know, it just disappeared. I think about how it would be hard to be a comedian starting now because everything is recorded. Everything is out there. You know, content, get it out there. And it's almost like, God, I'm so glad I had an organic and safe place to kind of figure out what my voice was as a comedian. I really feel I was lucky in that time to have a little bit of, that anonymity to grow.
Does that give you freedom then? Just like freedom to fail, right? Like to try something, not work, and not have it recorded and available. Is that what you mean?
Exactly. And to be able to walk away from it and go, that's the past. And now lead on to the next, you know, like that's not going to haunt me for forever. I don't mean to make it sound like that. Also, social media is a great and wonderful thing too, but it's just interesting to me because I'm like, there's so much pressure in the world now, as I'm sure you know, content, get it out there, let people know who you are, what are you making? Whereas back in the day, it was like, just, you could hide a little bit more. And I feel there was a little bit of safety in that until you figured out who you were and what you wanted to do, which I think takes a bit of time in life and in your career.
And it's probably true of most professions, right? That you almost need to be, is seasoned too dramatic a word? You almost need more, you need more experience in order to be better at what you do, whatever that is. And I imagine that's true in comedy. I think is no kind of accident that the biggest kind of names in comedy tend to be, 40 plus. They're not, 20-year-olds who nail it every time because they haven't lived enough of life to have enough material.
Yeah. And hey, I'm not saying young comics, you don't have things to say, but I do think we need to have some lived experience before, we have a full idea of who we are. So yeah, I do think your comedians that have had a little bit of lived experience, have been on stage a bit, but that's the same with anything. You need a little bit of life under you before you know who you are.
Was there anything growing up in Canada? Because obviously that changed when you moved to Manchester. But growing up in Canada, was there anything like that we can draw on from my walk of life, like advertising or anything on TV, cultural moments that kind of entertained you that maybe, you took inspiration from, or looking back, it was just, possibly something that might have shaped your sense of humor?
It's funny because I was thinking about this last night when we were talking, and there was a show on Canadian television. I don't know if you've heard of it. I know it was in Australia. Degrassi Junior High. And it was a very big Canadian television show. And it was like made by CBC. It was low budget. Degrassi Junior High was really the main one. And what it was about a group of junior high kids, so middle school. They were kind of actors, but they literally just hired like kids. It was filmed on the streets of Toronto, in schools in Toronto. It was very low budget. But what was so interesting about Degrassi Junior High was that it was really approaching things like abortion and pregnancy and like drugs and things that were very intense in a very low budget, cheesy way. But as a Canadian, we grew up on this and it became like our whole world. And like even in the finale, like we found out that like Joey Jeremiah cheated on Caitlyn and he was fucking Tessa Campanelli. Sorry, I don't know if I can say that, but that was the big line, right? Everyone in Canada was like, you were fucking Tessa Campanelli. Like people, and it was just this cheesy little show. But I think it really influenced me because it was this whole concept of like, just talk about some like, again, don't be vulnerable, and these are the realities, and I just loved it. So I think that influenced me just in like the idea of honesty and being who you were. And all these actors weren't pretty as well, if I could say. They were your average looking, because we were very influenced by the US, and the US completely took over Canada, right? We have no celebrity system, and the US celebrity system is all about pretty and beautiful. And, and so it was so nice to have this like traditional, like these are real kids, they look like me. So it was very fascinating. And I think that influenced a lot of us as Canadian kids. You mentioned anyone in Canada, Degrassi Junior High, and their faces will light up. So yeah. That was one cultural thing that I think really influenced us as Canadians. We were really liberally educated as children.
Yeah. So you haven't been contained to Canada though, right? So in your career to date, in fact, I learned this week when I was listening to Women Talking Bollocks that you broke I think you said your cruise cherry last year, I believe. But prior to that, you've done oil rigs, you've done, fundraising night, banquet hall, all sorts of stuff. Like what's that like? Because I imagine the audiences must change in a way that it's probably hard to even describe.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit more family and a little bit more mature audience because these are people that have time to cruise, So yes, it is different, but I have really enjoyed it because it's given me the opportunity to kind of rework my international chops, because the cruise ships will have British, they will have US, they will have Canadian, so it's kind of fun because I can make some references that maybe US might get, but the British don't. I can make a reference that the British get and maybe the US don't. So it's kind of fun to play with the crowd like that because I know that, because I can see that, That is really fun for me, being able to like have a perspective on cultural differences and different wording and this and that. Like even the joke, the fanny pack joke, which you asked me about, which I think is very funny. I mean, revealing that to Americans is hysterical. Like explaining to them what fanny is, and then it's amazing. Like, so that sort of thing is really fun for me to be able to play around with. That sort of stuff is great, and to educate audiences a little bit on like, okay, this is British, this is US, this is Canadian. That I really enjoy being able to have that perspective. I'm very grateful for.
Funny enough, you said earlier that Yuck Yuck gave you a chance in part because, they were mostly just blokes rocking up to these types of events. And funny enough, even if you ask Google about Canadian comics, they just list men, right? You get like Mike Myers, yeah. Jim Carrey, Seth Rogen, etc., etc. And yet, like Mike Myers, who I think you could probably put a strong argument forward that his comedy and his style is very British. Not that we're trying to claim him, but I feel like you're the same. Like I feel like you naturally fit the UK. And is that something that you felt when you moved to Manchester? Like, did it feel more like your type of space, or have you just evolved into being geographically within the UK? Does that make sense?
Yes. I think, yeah. I mean, look, Canadians and the UK, we're all very similar. We understand sarcasm. You know what I mean? Like our humor is very similar. And when I first came here, and I don't want to divide, but I will say when I first started doing comedy over here, so I started in the north, Manchester, Liverpool. It was a little bit different because there were some, terminology and things. But I actually found it a little bit easier doing comedy in the north than I did when I lived in London. And I know that sounds silly, but it took me a second because London is such an international audience. So London is international. Yes, it's UK, but it's international. You come up to Manchester and Liverpool, you're in England. you're in the north of England. You know what I mean? So that was interesting. And then going down to say like, Southampton, then I'm in Southampton. Everywhere had a very different feel. But for me, I think naturally the north, just because my grandmother's, I have Mancunian family. So I think I kind of, the vibe, I understood it. Once I understood London, loved London. But London is an international city. That's what people have to remember. When you're doing comedy, I think it's such a variety of people. Whereas when you're in other parts of the UK, you are probably going to have British audiences there. Yeah. Yeah. So that was different. That was interesting to learn. And then even outside, like there's a difference between Liverpool and like, let's say, Merseyside or just outside of Liverpool. You start to learn the differences. But it's kind of the same as Canada. You go to a small town and you're going to feel the difference in a small town than if you're in, a bigger city. So it's just learning that. And it's also learning cultural things like certain jokes that will not work here because you do not do certain things that we do in North America, like exchanging Valentines on Valentine's Day. I remember the first time I tried to tell a joke about exchanging Valentines in primary school. And you guys don't do that here because it's usually an all boys or all girls school. And also the exchanging of Valentines would just be. So I remember I did the joke, I told the story, and the audience just looked at me like I was an alien. And I was like, I've done this on Canadian television. Why isn't this working? Because it's a totally, even if you describe it, it's still, it took me a while to figure out how to maybe make that work because it was so far from anything you guys had experienced. I mean, maybe you'd seen it on TV, but it wasn't common. It wasn't that now I can tell it in a way that I can sort of make it make sense and do it quicker, but it took me quite a few years to figure that out. Yeah.
There's something that I'm going to ask you, which there's a danger you can over-intellectualize comedy, I suppose. There's something we think about a lot in my place of work is what makes something funny. And we obsess over that. And we kind of have to, we deliver. It's not always funny, ha. It can be just sort of playful or witty, but we deliver that type of work and it can be in any sort of industry. One of our key clients, this is, batshit crazy, but they sell millions and millions of, those little size cubes you get on clothes hangers. Like they sell millions of those worldwide. I'd never even thought someone made those. And so within industries and like categories like that, it's actually quite easy to be funny because they're just such ridiculous items no one thinks about.
Yes.
But then equally we work with like, fairly high esteemed or global law firms and we try and introduce wit into those sorts of areas. Is there anything consistent that you found, from oil rigs to London to wherever, that you can answer what makes something funny? Or does it have to be so specific to the audience?
I mean, there's definitely things that can be funny for specifics to the audience, but I think there are some universal truths and some universal things that we all connect with. I always feel like, again, it goes back to the most honest and I always think about like, okay, if I'm saying something, if I want to present something that is funny, what would make everyone else connect with it? So it's almost like looking for the most human connections within all topics. Like as soon as you started talking about, the little things on, the hangers, I started thinking about, okay, well, right away my head goes to like, clothes getting stuck on them or hurting your fingers trying to get those bloody things off. Or do you know what I mean? Immediately I go to what is something we all connect with that subject matter? Because I think that's the thing is when you get to the core, honest human reaction to things, people have the same reaction. So it's almost looking for that commonality amongst all of us. That is what I think makes everything. But it's funny because you say make it common, but then it has to be specific to you. But again, when you're telling your story and you're telling something true or a true thought, I think people identify. People know when you're selling them bullshit and people know when you're telling them something that sort of comes from a true place. I believe that audiences sniff out lies and sniff out truths. And I think that's the same for advertising. I think that's the same. So I think it's always going to what is the most basic human connection that we would all have on that topic? What makes it specific to me? And that's kind of where I always start with things, I think, when it comes to humor.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And do you think any topic can be funny? Like, are there areas where you just wouldn't go?
I think that depends on the person, because definitely there are some topics to me that I'm like, look, it's not my topic to talk about. And some comedians, look, there are people who would say stand-up is, we are the underbelly of society. It is our job to talk about things and to express opinions on things. But for me, I feel I have every right to express opinions, thoughts, ideas on my life experiences, on things that are true to me, on things that I have, other topics that don't pertain to me. Even if I have an opinion on it, it's like, well, it's not my story to tell. I talk about my story. I talk about my opinions on society through my eyes and my reflections. But I don't I don't know. I don't try and push a rhetoric on an audience to get them to see it. I don't know. That's me. That's how I do it. I stay eyes on my paper. That's how I feel I do comedy. I know there's a lot of people out there that want to comment on, social things that are going on or topics or that. But I'm not political. I'm not political in my humor. I never have been. I don't want to be. I want people to laugh and have a good time. And I don't know. Like, I'm sure through my jokes, I do say things. I make people think. I talk about certain things. But again, it's all the things that I want to talk about. I'm not picking on topics in society and going, here's my opinion on this. It's not my story to talk about.
Yeah. That makes complete sense. At the risk of making this about me.
Please, go ahead.
Sorry, it's almost 200 episodes now, and no one ever asked me. No, I'm joking. I gave a talk recently about how humans sort of reach for humor in really emotional, challenging, and very dark moments. So, for example, delivering a eulogy at a funeral. Typically, there's lots of humor. It's a really good way of grieving, but in a way that unites people. And one of the stories that I found out that I shared in this talk was about, and you might have heard of this, it was during World War II, the Germans built a massively kind of elaborate fake like air base full of fake buildings, wooden runways, wooden planes in order to waste Ally kind of weapons and bombs. But the Allied forces had already discovered they were building this. And instead of just letting the Germans get on with it, they waited till the Germans had finished. And then the very next night, they dropped one wooden bomb on it. which is just the most amazingly British response, but it's also so fucking ridiculous. And if you think about it, at a time where resource was scarce, people were dying, it was a horrific, obviously, occasion that I can't even put into words. They still found time to do something so wonderfully ridiculous and funny. And what's amazing is that during all sorts of tragic occasions, even the pandemic, right? There's lovely stories of people uniting through humor. It strikes me that humor is just one of those things that, regardless of how severe the context is, there's something so like innately human about it, which is something that I think we shouldn't shy away from. And often, and this isn't in response to the previous question about certain topics being too, I don't know, maybe too sensitive, because I think you answered that, perfectly, and I fully agree with you. But I do think there's people do dismiss humor, right? Maybe like the teacher did to you when you were, we can't all entertain our students like you do. Like, there is this weird kind of opinion of humor as if it means, I don't know, like you're the clown. But actually, humor is so important and so powerful.
Well, it's interesting. Even as you're saying that, I mean, look at all the Oscars, look at all the movies that win all that. It's very rarely comedy, right? Nobody takes comedy as like this thing that can really, but in times of desperation, that's what everyone's looking for. They're looking for like some release, something that is uplifting. Let's keep going. There's stiff upper lip, but sometimes we need to have a chuckle as well, so you can see. Yeah, I do believe it's interesting because people don't hold comedy in the regard that it should be held in. People kind of go, oh yeah, but I challenge, like, okay, you just go make people laugh then, or you just go make something funny. Like, it is so hard because even just what is funny, what is a joke? Like, when I started comedy, I didn't understand. I read books on like how to write a joke. What are jokes? Set up, punchline, tag. Like, it's again, I think maybe that's the thing. It's finding that vulnerability and those moments of true human, I don't know, despair, weakness. You have to find it's almost like the thing that keeps us going sometimes. Like, I mean, look at the state of the world right now, the U.S. I mean, if we don't make fun of Trump, we're this is why people are laughing, because it's hard to really grasp. If you don't laugh at it, you're going to cry. You got two choices in life, right? You got to laugh or you're going to cry. And, as a junior high kid, I did a lot of crying. And I think that's why my goal now is to be in comedy, to turn the tears into laughter, to be like, okay, laugh this shit off, because you can't cry about everything, but you can have a giggle about things and move on. So, yeah, I think it is an underestimated skill that a lot of people don't see the value in, or just go, oh, those comedians. And you're like, oh, all right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, I don't think you could ever show me a dumb comedian. That's the thing. I remember talking about, who was it? Pub landlord Al Murray, and like his insane kind of education that he's had at Oxford. And in fact, I think it's true consistently of every comedian I've ever seen live or met or spoken to. And I'm not just trying to blow smoke here either. Like, it's really, you just can't find a stupid comedian, because you couldn't be a comedian without intelligence. Like, there's something really intelligent, and to be witty, you need intelligence, like to create these links that people get, and almost become like a participant in the joke, because your audience is filling in the punchline or making the connections. Like, that's a really tough thing to do. And I think that, again, to force another parallel, like in like the most effective sort of advertising out there does that, and it's almost like, I don't know, trying to take comedy and putting it on a billboard or wherever it might be. It's really hard to write in a way that connects. I was going to ask you about your podcast. So I don't know whether they're finished or just on a brief hiatus, but the two very different podcasts, in fact. So Women Talking Bollocks with the brilliant Jen Brister and Maureen Younger, and also Horror Motel. You haven't recorded an episode for a while.
Yes.
How did each one come about, and did that give you a kind of different type of space from a comedian perspective, like creatively?
Yeah, I mean, God, yeah. I love the world of podcasting. I adore it. How they came to be. So Women Talking Bollocks, WTB, was a project that, like many of the online projects, started during the pandemic. We were like, okay, what are we going to do? Do we have the time? None of us had done a podcast at that moment. And then we teamed up with Impatient Productions, who at that time had also not done a podcast. So all of us just kind of took it on as like this project where we're like, all right, let's make a podcast. And then that went on for 5 years. We did a weekly podcast. It was incredible because I got to do things that I always wanted to do. I always wanted to have an advice column and like an agony aunt. I got to do that. I got to work with Jen and Maureen, which was just a blast, being able to chat with friends, weekly, be in touch, talk about things that are going on in our lives. And it was we loved it because, of course, it was focused for gals. We had some male listeners, which was wonderful, but it was Women Talking Bollocks, because at that time, and still at this point, I find a lot of podcasts is still pretty male dominated. No offense, not saying anything wrong with that. That's just what it is right now. I think I think it'll change like everything does. I think there's more and more female-based podcasts, I think. But our main thing was, when we were looking at a podcast, I said, I see when it comes to female podcasts, the ones that are successful usually have a niche or a topic, whereas a lot of the male podcasts, they got to just shoot the shit and they would get listeners. So I was like, I really wanted a podcast where we were more shooting the shit. I really wanted to and the girls agreed. So we had areas, like we had topics within the podcast, but it was like not so nichey. Like, there's a lot of really successful podcasts out there about, all killer, no filler, great female-led podcast by Rachel Fairburn and Kiri. But again, it was about killers. It was about, I wanted and we all agreed. So we did that. So Women Talking Bollocks was wonderful. What I learned from that podcast, though, was that you got to really factor in how much time podcasts take. This is the other thing. You got to realize, and because people were sending me in questions for advice, I mean, I took it pretty serious. Like, I would research, I would look over material, because I didn't want to be giving out advice that was awful. I didn't want to not make anyone feel. So it actually started taking up quite a bit of my time, which I did love, because I love looking into problems and solutions and, that sort of thing, and talking to people. But it was quite time consuming. So I learned a lot with that one. And because it was 3 of us, it was tricky. We always did it from a distance. So we were never together in the same room, which made it real easy too. Nice that way. And we really loved it. Whereas Horror Motel, that was one where I was like, look, I love horror movies. I have always been a horror movie fan. I've met Bunny Galore, Martin, and he as well love for horror movies. And so that at that time I was like, okay, well, I've got my broad podcast. Let's try a niche-y one and see what that's like. Go more niche, specifically about things, which was fun. And that one too was more like we just did seasons. So that was nice because it gave us some flexibility. So WTB was weekly. Horror Motel would be like, okay, let's do a season, 10 episodes, and then we'll take a break. And so it was kind of nice because we could pick up and it's a bit more flexible, which was lovely. And also, I find when you meet the right people, it is just a dream doing a podcast. Like, it is so fun. And I have to say, all the people that I've had the joy of working with, Martin, Maureen, Jen, I mean, I've been very blessed. It can be very tricky if you get two people on a podcast with a different agenda. It can be real tricky then. So I loved it. And it did. It opened up my medium of comedy so much because there was things you could say, there were things you could do. And what I found was doing a podcast, it's about more details. It was like the close up on the face. And, you know, when you're doing humor, I loved it because I just thought this is a whole different, it was like a talking head, right? And I had always wanted to be a talking head on a TV show. So to me, podcasts are like, oh, this is talking head. Like, they're just looking at your face. If you're going to sell a joke, you do it with a little twitch of the eye or with a little this. Or I just thought it was such a lovely medium to be working on and such a good way to get out to so many people, which can be a blessing and a curse, right? So it's funny because I speak of social media in a fond way, but then there's this other old school part of me that's like, I didn't ask to have to do a second career to do my first career. But I love the world of podcasting. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It's almost like a double-edged sword. Like you were saying earlier about with kind of, I suppose, social media and people uploading reels on Instagram and whatever else, that everything's recorded now, whether your comics don't get that anonymity. Whereas I suppose another form of newer media in podcasts and in fact social media almost makes the world of comedy a bit more accessible to anyone. So
Yes.
there's kind of, I suppose, two sides to it. What's your favourite horror film, if you can choose just one? Or do we need to go top three?
Yeah, no, my number one is Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors. It's classic. It's where they're in an asylum for kids that are having trouble sleeping. It's the epitome of like teen horror. Like, yeah, number 3, Dream Warriors. That's my all-time favorite one. Then I really enjoy, but I like bad horror movies. Like, I like stuff like Wishmaster and like horrible bad horror movies. But I love horror movies because they're a moralistic thing, right? There's always a moralistic lesson that you're learning. And that's why I love a horror movie. Right? There's something you're going to learn out of it.
What makes a bad horror movie? Do you mean like bad budget, like poor budget, or just a
Yes, yeah, like a B rate, a C rate, a D rate. Yeah, not a lot of money into it. But I mean, original horror movies are where most people get their start. Like, look at Leprechaun. The very first Leprechaun is where Jennifer Aniston got her start in movies. It's like horror is where everyone gets It's kind of like the look down on genre. I guess kind of like comedy a little bit because there's such a fine line between horror and comedy that I have such respect for it because I just feel it's this whole genre that is, I don't know. Yeah. I love scary movies. They're the best.
Nice.
I spent my childhood watching scary movies. So yeah.
I'm mindful of time. I need to go to listener questions. But before I do, I'm actually quite annoyed with myself because I wanted to ask you in the quickfires, Dean or Angie. And I didn't get
Angie.
to do it.
I'll go with an Angie. Yeah, Angie.
But can I throw a few other names at you? So just for the benefit of our listeners, can you unpack that a bit for me, or
Yes.
do you want me to explain?
No, I'll do it. So I have a theory. I think probably from teaching, maybe just living my life, certain names have personalities that go along with them. I really believe it. Now, of course, there are going to some people out there who are like, I'm not like that. I'm sure there are names that are exceptionalities to the rule, but in general, I feel this. So give me some names and I'll tell you some opinions.
Well, we can start with Dean.
Yeah, Dean, he's a prick. Deans are always pricky. They might be okay, but they got a little bit of a prick inside of them where they're just unhappy. They just want to make you miserable a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And Angie's a slag.
Angie's a slag. Yeah.
Allyson, you're a crier, yeah? Allison's a crier.
I'm a crier.
What are Giles's?
Yeah.
What are Giles's? Giles?
Oh, Giles's. Okay, so the Giles that I have met in the past.
Don't hold back.
Yeah, okay. Obviously, intellectual readers into books, thinkers. Obviously, Giles is, I was going to say thinkers. When I think of Giles that I've taught as younger kids, they're quieter. How am I doing so far?
No, that works. What about Elliot?
Okay. Elliot. Oh, see now, Elliot, you would think would be like a little nerdy kid, but I think Elliot has something to prove. So Elliot's usually act quite tough.
Nice. Now, you may not have obviously you've met Neothy, or because Neothy helps produce the podcast. I imagine you've never taught a Neothy. I think it's fair to say her name's probably quite rare. But what do you think of with Neothy?
Neothy. When I think of Neothy, I think of somebody who is a calming influence.
I feel like you're just being kind.
I might. Well, I said teens are pricks. But Neothy, I think of calming, but I'd have to meet a particular. Are they particular as well? I wonder. Particular?
Okay. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. That's fair. I love your Jeff. Your Jeff versus Geoff, by the way, because you're Jeff with a J. You're a big fan, but the Geoffs, i.e. my father-in-law, he's a...
Is he grumpy? Is he? You can't say it. You don't have to say
honestly, you nailed it. You absolutely nailed it with him.
Yeah. They're brilliant. Great. Geoffreys are great, but they're just a little grumpy sometimes. Just a little bit of a in them. Yeah.
I got one more name because a friend of mine asked me to throw her name at you.
Yeah.
Go Marion.
Oh, Marion. God, okay. I'm going to say when I think of a Marion, someone who silently judges.
Yes. Love it.
Am I right?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything. Right. Sorry, listener questions. So asking the general public for their opinion, be it on Brexit or boat names, is notoriously fraught with danger, but that's not stopped us. So I'm going to try and sneak two in if we've got time. So Angie asks, no, I'm joking. Kieran asks,
yeah.
You've lived in Manchester for 10 years. Do you say balm now? Is it balm? Bread roll?
Oh, no, we say butty. It's a chip butty. We say butty. Yeah, butty.
Just like that as well. Amazing.
Yeah, because I grew up with my dad eating chip butties, but my friends would come to the house and be like, "Why is your dad eating a French fry sandwich?" I was like, "Oh, no, that's a chip butty." So that's what I would say. Yeah, butty.
Nice. The next one is from Jacob. It's quite a long one. I'm going to read it all out, but I think it's mainly the first part. Can you break down where art and entertainment and education collide and divide? Not that it's equivocal, but content creators feel like they have to do all three or disregard two of those, i.e. art and entertainment. What do you think? Can't art entertain and educate?
100%. Yeah, that's the purpose of art. So art and entertainment and education. You can use art and entertainment to educate. However, I think there is a point where art and entertainment are forced to separate from education, because although education should teach us true liberal thought, I don't think it does. I think sometimes it teaches us to fall into line. And so I believe there is a point. I believe art and entertainment can help education, but I think education can sometimes be the end of art and entertainment.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
I love that. All right, I'm going to put our 4 pertinent poses to you. This is the final part of the interview then, Allyson. So number 1 is, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Just trust your gut. Absolutely trust your gut. You know what you're doing.
Nice. If you could banish one thing from your industry, what would it be and why?
Ageism. Because I find sometimes when you're a young comic, the audience doesn't give you the credibility that they should, because they go, this is a young person. And then I feel right now in the industry, if you are of a certain age, people are going, well, we want fresh and new. We want fresh and new. Whereas, as we were saying before, I think sometimes age gives you the experience. It gives you the skill set. Youth is exciting and new. So I think ageism on both sides is something. Yeah.
Love that. Are you much of a reader? Have you got any books you can recommend to our listeners? We've had all sorts, by the way. We've had all sorts.
I mean, look, I'm a bit of a... You're going to laugh, but I think a book that everyone should read is Siddhartha. Siddhartha is an excellent book. I love the journey and development and questioning things. So I love the Siddhartha.
It's never come up, and that's rare on, episode 180-ish. So I love it. I love it when we get a new book. So that's fantastic. And then lastly, we always dedicate every episode to somebody, and we bestow that honor on our guest who has to give their reason why. So would you dedicate this episode to somebody?
Yeah, I would absolutely, with all my heart and soul, dedicate it to Joan Rivers. Yeah.
Nice. Awesome.
She is such a comedian, and she was just, I didn't even really, until I started comedy, I didn't realize her significance. And so for me, yeah, Joan Rivers.
Amazing. This episode is very proudly dedicated to Joan Rivers. Fucking brilliant. As a final call to action, everyone listening, we will share links to not only everything we've discussed in the last hour, including the 2 podcasts. We'll link to Allyson's website. We'll probably throw in a few stand-up reels that we found on YouTube and the like. But how else can our listeners get more Allyson June Smith?
Yeah, I would love it. Please go to my website, sign up, become a person that follows me, www.AllysonJuneSmith.com. Look for me on Instagram, Allyson June Smith, or sometimes it's Allyson J. Smith, but you'll find me. Oh, Allyson is a weird spelling. Let me point this out. If you're looking for me,
yes,
it is Alllyson, because my grandma said a Y looked more posh than an I. So Allysson. If you look up Allyson, Canadian comedian, that you're going to find me. There's only one.
You're going to find you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that Y. That Y theory.
I know it. She literally, my Mancunian grandma, she's like, no, put a Y and it looks more posh.
Nice.
All right.
She's not wrong.
I know. Yeah. It does make it look really pretty, but awkward as hell to spell, and everyone gets it wrong. So Alllyson, everyone.
Amazing. Listen, Allyson, thank you so much. I've loved this. It's been awesome. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for letting me talk.
And finally, thank you to everyone listening. If you've enjoyed the episode, please do share and review the pod. Keep your questions and guest requests coming in. To get in touch, it's easy to find Gasp online or email the mouthful, that is call to action @gasp.agency.
Can't get no call to action. I can't get no call to action, but I try and I try and I try and I try. I can't get no call to action. Oh, I can't get no call to action. Yeah, hey, hey.